The story of the protein. That's a good place to start. Man, that's a lot of years ago.
I mean, because it's been out for what, a year and a half, 2 years?
I think we released the end of 2018. But we went through a lot of prototype phases before we landed on the circuit that we wanted. You had a couple pedals that worked really well for you, working really well live, and you wanted them together in one box. Can we put these two circuits in one box without losing anything?
I think I had done some trips overseas, and if I could get those two in one box, I'd throw that in my backpack and throw a delay pedal in there, and like you're pretty much good to go.
Built some protos of that, and we're really happy with it. But this has been, what do you think? You came to me in 2010 with this?
I remember it took a lot of time because, I mean, obviously a lot of people have done blues breaker pedals and worked on some of the issues with the original, and they were really close. And as far as I understand with my non-technical brain, the issue with the original one tended to be with the output. Like you had to turn the output all the way up just to get to unity. So then people are trying to boost it. And I think what you had narrowed down, one of the things I didn't like was the way that the type of boost they were using to recover that volume or to not lose it.
If you're running the gain low on a blues breaker, then you have to run the volume all the way up. Kind of loses all its gas by the time it's all the way up. So we wanted to add an extra output section where it would have lots of volume on tap, but also wouldn't lose any of the low end. So critical, especially in the type of scenarios where you were using it not as a clean boost, but as a real low gain boost, but something to drive your signal and something to deal with amps that were super clean or just not very good sounding. That the blue side will make something sound fat and chimey and good. Even if you just have a pretty boring clean sound or even kind of a bad clean sound.
And then one was some little 1/8 Fender combo with like a volume and a tone, and I just remember it was purple. Like, you don't want to lose low end when you're playing through really bad backline.
Right.
I think that's what I liked the most, was having something, it's almost like a preamp. It was something that, like Swiss Army knife, using it to fix really bad sounding backline. But then the plus ended up being when I would bring it back with my actual amp, it just sounded even better. You're like, oh, like it sounded great with this really horrible stuff. And now it sounds even better with actual quality amps.
That amp that you've been using forever is just a tone stack modified, tweaked JTM 45. So the chimey blues breaker took a fat, dark, clean sound and then gave you like kind of a fat, chimey, light breakup sound.
I was trying to think of why I settled on those two circuits that I liked. I like that we didn't throw an order toggle on the pedal, because I know a lot of 2-in-1 pedals have that. I want as few things that I can mess up as possible. And the more knobs you give me, they could equal more creativity, or they could just equal me putzing around forever and not getting it right.
We kind of had this whole vibe of, let's make it as simple as we possibly can and make it so it doesn't have any bad sounds in it. That's something that I need live. If I'm playing at home and I've got hours to twiddle knobs, because especially in high pressure situations, in the middle of a show, like, you don't want stuff to be able to go wrong. You want as few failure points as possible. Having played live for years, having teched live for years, being the guy that's supposed to play the part or the guy that's got to fix it when it goes wrong, I try to make stuff pretty stupid proof.
It's like a head game. It's like making a record where when you have a compressor, you have an LA2A with like 2 knobs on it. You don't even really look. You just turn a couple knobs, like, yeah, sounds awesome. That's all my options. And you start giving me some of these crazy plugins, and I'll lose 3 hours tweaking it and then go back to the original sound that I had. So I like not having any little secondary option.
And we worked for a while to get these two circuits to share a power supply without buggering each other up, where they worked independently and were not affected by each other's use of power. And we did that, and we really liked what we came up with. because of that. The ODR1 circuit was so fun to play with because, you know, I was a tube screamer guy forever, and you came to me with this ODR1, this modified ODR1 that we kept playing with different variations of, that you were like, it's got more bass, it's got less mids than a tube screamer, it's got more mids than an ODR1, and I only need about an eighth of the gain that's available. And we got it to a place where it had less mid-range than a tube screamer, but still had some of that, you know, full mid grind, but it also had lots of low end and it had lots of gain, but it didn't have ridiculous amounts of gain like an ODR1 does.
It's such a great circuit, but the usable portion of it was just smaller.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Smaller range. And then obviously the low end would get a little, what's the word, woofy?
Yeah.
Really just not quite as tight.
We just changed a whole bunch of the values in the tone stack, the way that it affects it. You know, you and I were both pretty intent on having the pedal sound really great and ideal when all the knobs were like this.
Straight up.
I'm
not that smart.
Because it's like, again, back to and the idiot proof. I'm not calling anyone an idiot. I usually run it a little more like this, but, you know, still.
So I started getting it in my head that, you know what? A lot of my favorite records were made with gear that had one or two knobs on it. And so you just didn't think about it. And it takes enough of my energy to remember how to play the guitar right. So let's just make it as easy as possible. I think I stumbled on the green thing, the Noble side, where I would do that kind of the volume all the way up or close there and the gain almost all the way off.
Oh, you're going to tell everybody about your secret setting?
I mean, it's not.
All right. I just want to
turn everything all the way up and see what happens. So.
This is Adam's secret sauce setting. When if I'm playing really quiet or I have an amp that sounds super lame, this setting on the green side is awesome. Gain all the way down, level I mean, you're going to want to back the level down a little bit. You probably won't need all of it, but tone up just a little bit, and it just takes and try it. It just makes everything super squishy and amazing. Hold on, Jay-Z's calling me.
Oh, yeah. He's probably pissed that Beyonce was calling me.
Oh, why is calling you?
But it just makes stuff feel better when I, do the secret sauce setting. I don't know if it necessarily even makes it sound better, but it feels better to me. What do you think it is going on in the green side that makes it feel better?
Just that circuit just feels good to play. It took me a long time to come around to that circuit. I wanted the green side to be a tube screamer. I love tube screamers. I mean, I love them. And I especially love my version of a tube screamer, which I have a version of a tube screamer that I've done for years, that I've had for years, that I played forever, that I love. And I love the way it pokes out in a mix. But it's not as utilitarian as the green side. And what you kept coming back with is, I like the fattening, thickening, you liked what the green side was doing to your signal, not necessarily for lots of gain, like you just said, but just because of, how it helped you deal with thinner or smaller amps, or just where you were sitting in a mix. And it ended up being the right choice. I fell in love with this as we played with it over the years, and it's an amazing sounding circuit, that green side. I have played so many protein pedals, and I get sick of testing them, but I don't ever get sick of the sound. So it makes me feel like we got something right.
But I think some of the utilitarian thing is from the worship world side, because, most times if you're in a band, the band goes on tour, you've made a record in the studio, you have your sounds dialed in. If there's two guitar players, their parts mesh, and you're doing what you do, those two parts.
You're dialed.
Yeah, and you're taking your backline on the road. Not all the time, but there's more of a defined sound.
Yeah.
But so many times with worship stuff, especially if you're kind of itinerant hired guitar player to fly in,
right?
Maybe the record has two guitar players, but they just have you,
right,
with backline. So there could be a really great part that's small, and on the record it sounds perfect being that small, but now you're trying to fill up extra space
Right.
with bad backline. And so having that, it just kind of helps you fill whatever cracks you have to. And I just started realizing, wow, some pedals and amps are just magic combinations that I cannot have as mainly a flown in guitar player. I can't have a specific overdrive pedal that needs a certain amp.
Right.
I have to have something that just sounds good, almost like a studio pre, essentially.
Like, you know, like the Hudson Broadcast, it's a more goodifier.
I get a lot of questions about settings, and a lot of times I'll reply and tell them to really, really mess with the gain and the tone pot because they're so interactive. Like if I have the gain up on the blue side fairly high, I might have the tone way to the left. I mean, it kind of looks weird how I would run it. What is it that makes the tone and the drive on this pedal so interactive?
The gain knob brings in a lot of high end. I want to be able to have plenty of high end and take it away versus not having enough high end. So as you bring the gain up, you have more high end than you need, and you're able to roll it off with the tone knob, and hopefully the curve is right for you. There's also the ability to have the gain way down on either of them and still have plenty of brightness.
And I probably bought 10 or 12, maybe probably more, blues breaker based circuits.
That output section, it's got so much output to it, and we're running so little of what it has available that it gives a really big feeling and a lot of headroom.